All right, Kevin Michael Schmitz here, and I'm the TV host, director, producer of the TV show Great Escapes that airs on CBS. And I am also a celebrity fashion photographer, as well as the owner of the epic French Dream Castle. And we handle a tremendous amount of ultra luxury events. Whether we're bringing people in on private jets, bringing them via helicopter to the front courtyard, creating an experience with Michelin star chefs. This is something that we absolutely specialize in, and it's something that I want to disclose some of the secret strategies to luxury destination event and wedding planning. And today I'm going to kind of uncover and reveal some of the secret strategies that we use and some of the unique aspects of designing and creating an amazing experience for your bride that they will never forget in a destination with all the details taken care of. And this is one of the biggest challenges. So, and if, maybe you guys have seen me on television, we also have a new TV show in addition to Great Escapes that airs on CBS, but we have a new TV show as well that we're going to be filming in France at a 49-room 13th century castle that's going to be an incredible show specifically about that process. And it is an amazing opportunity and showcasing some of these amazing events as well. So anyway, I wanted to talk with you guys today about what are some of the challenges, of course, that you guys are all running into as far as an event and wedding planner. Now, a lot of wedding planners, of course, it comes down to clinching that deal with the client, right? The clients that you're dealing with, whether you've dealt with them before, whether they're a new client, they want you to take away all of the stress, all of the hassle, not have to worry about their amazing day. I mean, that's essentially why they're bringing you to the table. Otherwise, they could call up all the vendors and deal with it themselves. But of course, it's chaos. It's absolutely insane to plan a wedding. And those of you guys that are wedding planners on right now, I commend you because you guys are the heroes of brides and grooms, and you are making their events flawless and giving them an experience of a lifetime so they can sit back, enjoy, and experience that special day. Now, the challenge comes in, though, is obviously there's all kinds of problems when you're planning an event and when you're planning a wedding. There are all kinds of issues that come about, right? Things that don't arrive on time. There's, the photographer that might take too long, or the venue has a problem. Maybe they've got another, they've got a leak in the roof, or they've got a double booking, or they've got some other issue, or their staff isn't right, or chefs that are a problem, or catering staff that you need last minute. There's all kinds of things that can come about that can kind of ruin the day. And that's, of course, with you as a wedding planner can come in and save the day, especially if you have a network. Okay. Now, this is the advantage, and each and every one of you, I mean, I have wedding planners from all over the world that are on this webinar right now, but I know there's quite a bit of you guys from Manhattan, New York, as well as Beverly Hills and Los Angeles. I know we have a big audience from those specific areas dealing with high-end luxury destination weddings. And it's something that I do want you guys to realize, that you have a network. You have people that you can rely on. You have people that you can contact. You have, probably, you could have 10, 15, 20 different catering crews and chefs that you deal with. And of course, you have your favorites, but then you've got all the backups. And if those don't work, of course, you can call up, 10 other caterers and get opportunities if you've got, if you have an issue with a caterer. Same with musicians, same with the officiants, same with dealing with the photographers. I mean, they're coming out of the woodwork. There's so many options. However, here is the challenge. When you are planning a luxury destination wedding, it's a lot different. You don't have the context in those places, okay? Many of you guys, I mean, and of course, you might have them in one destination, but maybe not all the amazing destinations that you can send your guests. So oftentimes when I go to, and I work with other wedding planners and we see their wedding planning site, oftentimes they only have like maybe a handful of select places that they, do their wedding planning venues. It's usually, if they're in the United States, it's typically like Caribbean or Bahamas, Mexico, Hawaii, which technically is part of America, but it's kind of a destination wedding. They don't typically go outside of the kind of North American region. It's uncommon. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But it's, first of all, it's very expensive to go outside of the North American region. Obviously, a lot less expensive to do it here, especially if you are. I'm here in California. And, if you're in Beverly Hills, obviously it's a lot easier to do a destination over to Hawaii, for instance, or down to Mexico, because your guests can all fly in. You're going to have a larger attendance. It's going to be less expensive. It's not going to be as complex. And also everything's a lot cheaper in those areas. However, if you have a bride that wants to go to an amazing destination, something unique, and this is what we're talking about today. I mean, whether we are going to a luxury resort in the Maldives and going and doing something unbelievable where they're being whisked away to the Maldives at some, 7-star resort, which we have a lot of experience at because I've filmed 18 episodes of my TV show Great Escapes, and I believe like 11 of those episodes were in the Maldives. So we have a lot of experience going to the Maldives, and we also like to send a lot of our brides to on their honeymoon to the Maldives because it's so special. But planning a wedding in the Maldives is a whole different beast. And I did another one of these amazing webinars on specifically planning that and also doing it in the Maldives. And it is something that is a whole different way of going about it. And oftentimes you have to rely on the vendors that are there, that are located at that resort, right? Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing because the resorts have everything. The venue has, they've got their photographers, they've got their, the florists, they've got their, a huge amount of staff, especially in the Maldives, because it's generally like 2-to-1 staff to guests. So they have a tremendous amount of staff at your fingertips, and they can provide this unbelievable experience. However, if you're going somewhere outside of that, like in a major city, for instance, and you're going to, say you're, planning a wedding in Europe, it's a whole different ballgame. For instance, right now, France is super hot. The TV show Emily in Paris is, it's blown up. It's one of the most popular shows on Netflix. You had the Downton Abbey, the most recent Downton Abbey movie was actually done, where a whole section of it was done at a chateau in France. They have the Paris Olympics are coming up next year. There's a lot of excitement about France, and there's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of brides wanting to do their weddings as a destination wedding, and especially they want to have that Emily in Paris moment, right? This is very, very popular right now. Now, there's a challenge though. I don't know how many of you guys speak French, but if you've spent much time in France, I can tell you, because I lived there, almost half the year, really outside of Paris and the Côte d'Azur, almost nobody speaks English. I mean, almost nobody. All right. So if you don't speak fluent French, you're going to have a really hard time handling, finding the vendors, finding the locations, dealing with all the details, all the logistics, all the transportation, all of those type of things in a place like France. So this is a big problem. When you're, and this is throughout most European countries, but specifically France is a challenge, but it is a very sought after place. Now, why would a bride want to go to a destination wedding? Oftentimes it's a fairy tale. They want to have this fairy tale experience that's going to completely blow their mind. As you can see right here, a bride with her, horses with a, in front of this 49-room epic castle. It's a fairy tale. It's what, brides just fantasize about. Flying in on private jets, taking a helicopter right to the front courtyard of the chateau and having this unbelievable fairy tale experience. It's that billionaire bride level that they want. And this is something that's very challenging, though, to put on. So I just want to kind of, talk with you guys a little bit about some of these challenges. When you are doing destination weddings, like in France, A, the language is a big issue. B, there's also a big issue with vendors as far as relationships, okay? Now, you guys all have relationships, whether you're, say, in Beverly Hills or Manhattan or Miami or wherever you guys are located. However, oftentimes those relationships are pretty easy to find. If you contact a bunch of vendors, they all want work. They're all excited. They want to work with you. And if the budget's right, they're on, right? They're totally on. And even if they're your backup. In France, doesn't really matter. It's not really about money over there. It's more about long-term relationship building. Okay. And this is something that a lot of Americans have a hard time with. And I had a hard time with when I first, moved there. But basically, when you're handling a luxury destination wedding in France, and you're trying to find vendors, I mean, it is absolute insanity and chaos because a lot of people won't even work with you no matter what the budget unless they know you, unless they trust you, unless they've worked with you for months or years before they'll even be willing to work with you, before they'll even grace you with their presence. Right? That's a big issue. And then, of course, you have to have quality control, make sure the vendors are going to provide world-class quality and everything like that, as far as the food and the service and everything, which service in France is not always top notch, right? So we want to make sure that we are bringing, like, for instance, for us, there is a Michelin star restaurant nearby this castle. It's in Montluçon, and this castle, Montluçon-Cambrai, and this nearby, there's a Michelin star restaurant. So sourcing Michelin star restaurant servers, as well as hosts, as well as chefs from the other chateau is one of the things that we've done. That way, now we have connections. Now we can bring these people to the table so that we have Michelin star chefs that we can provide, right? But it takes building those relationships. It's not something that just overnight it can happen. And of course, you can always fly them in, which we also are doing that as well. Flying in some world-class chefs, for instance, that we've met in the Maldives at 7-star resorts down there, bringing them in to actually stay for months at a time so they can be our in-house people that we work with all the time, and they can make sure they're handling breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because at a venue like this, it's got 49 rooms hosting 38 guests that can stay within the castle, and providing an opportunity where they, all the groomsmen, the bridesmaids, they can all stay. They can all be there. They can be there with their family, and they can have that amazing experience, right? Now, of course, housing them there also creates some other logistical issues. So if you've got to have staff, you've got to have maids, you have to have butlers, we have to have Michelin star chefs, we have to have we have a masseuse in the massage room in the Southeast Tower. We've got people on premise to cater to every one of their needs, but it's not a hotel, right? So there are no other guests. It's a privately owned castle that, basically we bring in, the guests that can rent out the entire castle and have full access. And this is another issue. If you guys deal with, all the other fabulous castles throughout Europe, and you want to find other chateaus, for instance, in France, or castles in England, or castles in Germany, or whatever, that's great and all. But a lot of them are not necessarily privately owned. A lot of the best ones are actually publicly owned. The most fabulous castles, like in Chambord, in France. A lot of the castles in the Loire Valley, they're the most fabulous castles. They're publicly owned, and they're in a public trust. And then you have to deal with all the governmental issues. And a lot of times they don't do weddings. They don't do private events. And even if they do, you've got to deal with a bunch of, thousands of other people coming there, like tourists that are wandering about. It's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. For instance, we were there at Chenonceau, and if you guys, I'm not sure if you know what Chenonceau is, but it's one of the most fabulous, castles in France. Is absolutely spectacular. Amazing destination. And we were there just this last summer. And now, what was cool about the, Chenonceau is it's an unbelievable chateau. And this one, it's got a, long-term trust that handles it. And they do actually handle events. But the problem is there's a bunch of tourists everywhere. So they were like having this luxury event, and it was ungodly expensive. But it was also, there are tourists all over the place and getting all up in the business of the event. So, you don't really want that. That's a big issue. And a lot of times that's not really described to you as the planner before booking some of these locations, right? So that's kind of a challenge, or if you're dealing with another chateau or castle, oftentimes they're rented out as a, bed and breakfast. And so you might have other guests coming and going. And that's also a big challenge, right? Unless you have like a full buyout for, a week at a time, that's a challenge. In addition to that, the additional, you got to have support staff, not just for the wedding party themselves, but also the support staff of, is everyone else going to stay? If we're bringing in celebrity musicians, we're flying in celebrity musicians. If we're flying in, a whole, some extra staff, if we're bringing in, of course, the guests, and then also where are all the other wedding guests? Going to stay. So if we can host up to 800 guest weddings. So if it's a large scale wedding, and say it's a 400, 500, or even 800 person wedding, where's everyone going to stay? All these logistics are extremely complex. how to actually manage all of that. And that's something that, you got to think about as a luxury destination wedding planner. It's, the language barrier, the relationships, the catering, making sure that the food is up to that standard. Because, in France, yes, there are incredible Michelin star chefs, but there's also a lot of lower standard food too. So you have to be really careful not to have the wrong, catering crew there. You've got to have the best of the best for luxury guests, right? So I want you guys to think about all the details, all the little things that can become a big issue. One of the biggest challenges too that I want to mention is the just dealing with, in Europe, they have strikes. Now, right now, there's strikes going on all over France. Emmanuel Macron just announced some additional rollbacks to their retirement plans and things like that. So people are striking, people are stopping work. This is a common occurrence in France. In fact, we had a guest come. This was a friend of mine that came to stay that came with me last summer, and he decided, oh, I'm going to fly into Paris. I'm going to, don't worry about it. I'll take care of my own transportation. I'll take the train down. Okay. He does. Sure enough, there was a strike. The train stops in the middle of the trip, and just because all the workers went on strike, they stopped in the middle of nowhere and just let everybody off, and they had to find their own way. And this is in areas where there are no Ubers, there are no taxis, there's nothing around. So finding a way, and this person then had to find his way and found a bus, and it was this big, huge ordeal, and is a friend of mine, but it was like, oh my gosh, if that was a client, I would have never in a million years allowed them to take a train, for instance. I mean, never in a million years, no way. I'm going to arrange all the transportation, making sure that all the details are set up. There's no issues with strikes. There's no issues with them having to worry about this. Whether it's flying in on private jets or, we're chartering planes, or we're bringing them in on, luxury business class, but then making sure the transportation from the airport to the hotel or to the castle is going to be very, very, very important in a place like Europe. It's one of the most complex situations, managing transportation. And not just for the bridal party, but also all the guests, managing it for all of the, all the support staff, everybody else. It is a very, very complex situation. So I want you guys to start thinking about all the little things, all the details that aren't the norm when you're managing a, the local wedding in your area. Even if it is a luxury wedding, it's very, very different beast. Now, I want you guys to ask some questions, because I'm really, really curious to have your questions pitched. And also, if you guys have any stories or situations where you were planning a destination wedding and maybe something fell through or some issue came out, please answer it in the Q&A. We would love to basically answer as many questions, because this is a live webinar and I'd love for you guys to jump on live. We're also going to have an amazing panelist today, the great Priscilla Evans, who she is an Australian, but actually handles all the incredible luxury destination events and weddings at this 49-room castle. And she can also be an incredible resource, because she is handling things on the ground in French, dealing with people on a regular basis and coordinating all the absolute chaos. Okay, I have a great question from Bettina B. And by the way, Bettina, I love what you do. You have an amazing website. I've looked you up, and I know I was messaging you the other day. I'm really, really impressed at everything you're doing, and I think that it'd be absolutely fabulous to work together and bring and showcase some of your epic luxury guests with some of the incredible experiences that we offer as well. So, Bettina, you asked, how do you go about finding the right international catering? Okay, so this is a good question. So there's a couple of ways to do it. In France, for instance, what we're doing is we have Michelin star chefs that we are basically going around to the best Michelin star restaurants in the region. Now, there aren't that many in this region. Of course, they're mostly in Paris and also down in Aix-en-Provence, down in the south of France. But going to those restaurants, sourcing those, meeting and tasting the food, of course, because that's the best part. But then also building relationships with the chefs so that you have their personal contact information. Now, this is kind of challenging because, when you're at, for instance, Chateau Saint-Jean, and they've got this amazing Michelin star restaurant with all these chefs, they're very particular, and you go to try to meet them, even though you're there as a paying guest, and they won't even like allow the chefs to meet you personally. They want to like introduce you. So they're very like kind of secretive and very protective. So you have to kind of work through that. And I would recommend eating and being a customer, and then also pitching them and talking to their general manager about what you want to propose. Like, hey, I'm doing this luxury event. I'd like to include, your services, and maybe just for your first few events, work with them as like just contract with them. Just say, you know what, you handle all the catering. That's one way to do it. Okay. Of course, it's going to be a lot more expensive and you'll have less profit margin, but that is one way to do it. Another way, of course, is to just pick off those chefs, which is something that we're doing, like basically building relationships directly with the chefs and having them as our in-house chefs at the castle for the specific events, right? A whole nother way to go about it is finding chefs that you fall in love with. For instance, when we were in the Maldives filming for our TV show Great Escapes, this is something that I fell in love with some of these chefs because the chefs were incredible in the Maldives. And if you guys have ever been, the Maldives is, it's one of the most epic destinations in the world, bar none, one of the most incredible places to go. And also the cuisine is out of this world. They're bringing in chefs that are, Michelin star, and oftentimes they are from all over the world. And they were absolutely incredible as far as quality. And honestly, some of the best chefs I've ever experienced, even better than what I found in France, is some of these chefs at these luxury 7-star resorts in the Maldives that that I build relationships with and I bring them in. Okay, so that's something that is also one solution, and that's something that we have to work out. Now it's complicated because we're flying them in from another country to this country to be there as like basically we're housing him and having him stay at the castle, and he'd be an in-house chef there at the castle for like a few months at a time during the height of the season. So that is definitely one solution, bringing in those chefs. It depends on how many events and stuff you're doing, but from elsewhere. Now the challenge with that is that they don't necessarily have all of the best sources, right? Because if the chefs on the ground in the location are going to know where to source all the best meats, all the best vegetables, all the best, the produce and everything like that. So that's a big advantage. Whereas if you bring somebody in from another country, whether you're bringing them in from America or from the Maldives or from another country, it can be more of a challenge, right? Because now they have to figure out their sourcing. Okay, so yeah, and Bettina, you also asked a follow-up question. Do these international venues typically include catering or prefer bringing in our own catering? Well, typically, a lot of them already have relationships with catering. That's true. Some of them do it themselves. But for me, if you're going to do like a really high-end luxury guest, make sure that catering is on point. Make sure that is amazing. And make sure that you have the option to bring in your own, right? Or if they're catering so over the top, obviously go with them. So in our case, with this 49-room castle, we're making sure that the quality is at the highest possible level. That's why, even flying in chefs from other countries and things like that, and bringing chefs down from Paris, bringing chefs down from the Michelin star restaurants in the area, and providing this unbelievable cuisine and having this really, really high level quality. It's really, really important. So obviously there's a lot of challenges with destination weddings, and it's something that you as a wedding planner, I want you guys to think about all this stuff, because we need to make sure that all of the details are covered. And a lot of times wedding planners might think it's easy when you're planning a destination wedding because, we're just going on vacation and, we can just rely on this or that. And it honestly becomes a big, big challenge, especially in Europe. Europe is a special case, but it's super hot. And this is what a lot of luxury guests want, whether it's, a luxury wedding on Lake Como and in Italy, or, they're going to Switzerland, or they're going to, a castle in England, or they're going to a 49-room 13th century castle in France. There's a lot of different things. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is pricing. Okay. Pricing out this wedding. And oftentimes, you're dealing with guests that, are all different price points, and what their perception is of cost is very different than the reality. You guys probably ran into that before. And I would love for you guys to kind of start thinking about ways in which we can communicate to the clients how it's the added cost can mean equal added value, right? And that's really, really important, because oftentimes, they have a limited budget, $100,000 budget, whatever, they have their budget, $200,000 budget, $500,000 budget, $1 million budget, whatever that is. Oftentimes, though, bride and grooms are trying to save some money. Maybe it's a lower budget. Maybe they're trying to skimp. Maybe they're trying to, to make things cheap. And unfortunately, there are those types of destination weddings where they're just going to go on a cruise and do a destination wedding, or go down to Tulum and have in Mexico and do a destination wedding where they can get by and spend maybe 10 grand or something like that. But what we're looking for is the luxury destination wedding, the experience where it is a large bridal party, not just the small, like 10 people that will go and travel with them and the small little getaway, the 100, 200, 300 plus guests to go and have that amazing luxury destination experience. And even if it is smaller, obviously that's doable too, a lot more doable, but to make it worthwhile, especially for you because of the logistics of luxury destination wedding planning, make sure that the value in the budget is higher. Now, I'm going to be asking a few surveys and stuff throughout here and some questions to you guys, because I'm also very curious, but I would love for you guys, even in the chat, to give us your answer. What level of budgets do you typically handle when you're dealing with your clients? Where do your clients come in? Okay. And I think that's important because, I want to know kind of like what we're talking about. So, all right. So please put in the chat that in your level of budgets, and we'd love to hear it. And also you can also ask Q&As about this. But oftentimes, you guys are making a percentage where you have a flat fee for your wedding planning services. Now, a lot of wedding planners, if they're making, say it can range, but I know a lot of wedding planners that do, if it's like, say it's a big event. Okay, let's actually ask some of these wedding planners directly. So Marie V, and sorry, I put this up as for just hosting panels. Let me make sure everyone. So going forward, you guys can all see the posts. Okay, so by the way, Marie V, you said 200 to 300,000 plus for your weddings. Can you tell me what your wedding planner fee is on that, Marie? I'd love to know. What's your wedding and the same with Jacqueline. It's 250,000 plus for budgets. What is your wedding fee or your wedding planner fee or of that? Is it a percentage? Is it a set rate? Is it, and then tell me a little bit more about that. I'd love to hear. Okay. And Tori Cooper, $1,000 to $2,000 per person. So you're doing a per person average. Okay. Excellent. But tell me guys, as a follow-up, Marie, Jacqueline, Adrienne, Tori, what is the percentage that you typically charge your clients? 20%. Okay, excellent. Excellent. So Jacqueline says 20%. I'd love to hear from the rest of you guys as well. You guys are all around 20%. Fantastic. Fantastic. Excellent. Okay. And when you are charging the 20%, or even if it's less, 10 or 15%, but say it's 20%, are there any additional back-end compensation that you get from the vendors? Oftentimes I know a lot of wedding planners, they handle, this photographer that they book, they end up, giving them a kickback for if they book that photographer, or this, caterer. If we go with this caterer, they're going to give you a kickback. Do you guys also have that opportunity? And if so, how much is that and which vendors? I'd be actually very curious, because this is really important for everybody to also hear. And I want to give you guys some guidance and strategies of ways of maximizing that as well, because there's a lot of ways as a wedding planner to maximize profitability. And that's something that, whether you're making a, some additional back-end referral fees essentially for your vendors, because that can be really, really, really helpful. Okay. Marie V says, to reduce liabilities, we do not take commissions, but we offer more services in-house. Okay. Explain that, Marie. I'd love to know what services specifically you offer. That'd be, that you're offering in-house. That's really interesting. Yeah. But this is fantastic, but I love listening to this kind of stuff. Design. Okay, great. So she's talking about design specifically. Okay, photographer 7%, videographer 7%, vendors offer this to me if I hire them. That's fantastic, Adrian. I love that. I love that. That way there's always a little bit of back-end compensation. That way it incentivizes you to go with that photographer or that videographer or, that florist or that caterer if they're offering a little bit of percentage on the back end. And of course, you can always mark up their services too, to compensate. So if the photographer comes in at, say their photography services for the whole package is $10,000, and you want to have a 7% kickback, well, maybe we up that. Maybe we tell them it's $11,000. And then of course you just obviously take that off the top. Okay. Tori Cooper says complimentary stay from the venue, client to the planner, upgrades from the venue. Okay, excellent. Okay. Now a question for all of you, Tori, Adrienne, Marie, Melissa. I'd love to also hear, Jacqueline, do your venues offer you guys a kickback? They offer a like a referral fee or kickback to you? I'm actually really curious to hear your perspectives on that. Free rooms for staff. Okay. That's great. Yeah, it's normally just like a comp. Oftentimes, a lot of resorts and hotels, okay, they're offering comps. Some do, some don't. Okay, all right, and that sounds cool. Now, a lot of venues, in my experience, don't. A lot of venues, they're there to make money, and they don't really care about offering additional kickbacks if you go with them. Oftentimes, they obviously, and they want to handle the catering, they want to handle other aspects of it because they're trying to make as much money as possible. Okay, so that is something that is another great way to make money. I do recommend it, like adding a little bit of referral fee just to be able to maximize how much you're earning. So instead of it being 20%, over the full fee, what about if we are able to add an additional, say 7% to the other vendors? Now, the other thing though is that you're talking about only certain vendors you're dealing with, whether it's photographers or florists or you're handling videographers, things like that, but maybe not necessarily the venues. The venues are just offering additional rooms and things like that, and catering, of course. Now, one of the cool things about what the French Dream Castle does, and this is something that's very unique, is when we're going to this ultra luxury destination at the French Dream Castle, this is something that we wanted to be very, very, very generous with when dealing with wedding planners. So not only is it one of the most spectacular 49-room 13th century privately owned castles that you could literally do anything with. So I don't care who the client is, if they're an ultra wealthy, Russian billionaire or, some stockbroker in New York, but they want to get crazy, they want to party, whatever it is, sky's the limit because, it's privately owned, anything can happen here, and there are no other guests, nothing else. And, there's not a whole lot of rules. They can do anything they want imaginable, which is pretty fantastic. On top of that, when we're offering packages that range from $300,000 to $3 million per wedding luxury package, but it includes everything. And here's a cool advantage about this is that as the wedding planner, not only are you offering some unbelievable, spectacular destination and venue that you can also, the bridal party can stay at, where the packages include a stay, includes, everything from the catering, Michelin star chefs to having, a masseuse on premise, butlers, maids, every detail from multiple day events for them to come, stay, enjoy, experience everything, and then of course have, the spectacular day itself. But then also, the best part is, as a wedding planner referral, you as a wedding planner would also receive an additional 10% back from us as the venue. So if it's $1 million wedding and they have $1 million budget, you would, in addition to your 20%, you would receive an additional 10% back from us as a referral compensation. And the reason we're doing that is we feel as the wedding planners, you guys are the most important people, and we want to make sure that you are compensated and you are generously rewarded for bringing this, convincing your client to come to France and have this experience of a lifetime. And this includes everything, right? I mean, we handle everything. So you'll get, the compensation is extremely generous, but also on top of that, it's an experience of a lifetime to be able to stay and have this amazing castle. We can host up to 800-person weddings at the venue. And it is an unbelievable ultra luxury experience. And you as the wedding planner will get compensated. And the best part is that we have our own on the ground wedding planner in France that handles all the details and logistics in French with all of the vendors, with dealing with the Michelin star chefs, dealing with the musicians, dealing with all of the catering, dealing with the whole staff, dealing with the florist, dealing with all of the decoration, every detail imaginable. And that way it's a liaison between you and the bride and groom, so that you can essentially, you're the liaison to essentially communicate what the bride and groom's dream is, and our team in France can actually make all of it happen without you having to learn French and build all the people on the ground, which takes years to do. So there's a huge advantage there, and it's something that I would definitely love to offer that to you guys. Now, the other cool thing is that during this webinar, we are going to ask for you guys to we're going to be asking some survey questions, and the people that answer the survey questions, we're going to be putting you guys in as a one of the lucky winners that will be chosen is going to get a free all-inclusive stay at the venue to come to this fabulous 49-room castle and to stay and then have an experience of a lifetime there, totally free on us, and making sure you have that experience so that you can go back and tell your bride and groom how amazing it is and why you should bring them to the castle and they should have their wedding there. So, and if that is something that you guys are interested in doing, we will be asking a few poll questions, and then and those of you guys who answer, we're going to be offering this to a select person. So, pretty awesome opportunity there. All right, guys. Now, I'd love to bring on one of our panelists, and I've got a lot more stuff I want to get into because we are just touching on it. But the great Priscilla Evans. Now, she's an Australian, but she also does speak French, and she also handles everything at this 49-room castle and can talk about all these amazing things as far as the details of making the magic happen on location in an incredible place like France, but all the logistical challenges and some of the things that she deals with and she sees on a regular basis, because she's essentially the chatelaine of the castle and makes sure that all the little details and the guest experience is absolutely spectacular. So Priscilla, I'd love for you to jump on because I know you spend most of your life dealing with the castle. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you see on the ground handling events in France, some of the logistical challenges, and maybe some of the solutions that you have to make all of that happen that maybe these wedding planners could gain some insight to.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be on. And yes, I am the chatelaine of a gorgeous French castle that is American owned. Believe me when I say, don't underestimate the value that comes with the fact that this place is American owned. The French culture is amazing. I'm sure a lot of you that have been on or visited France that are on today. And, it's gorgeous. There's so much allure. There's so much that we see on television, we see, in films. And I think that it's going to be, as Kevin touched on earlier, it's definitely increasing. There is a huge push. There is a huge investment that the French government is putting into France right now. All of the tourist locations they're doing up. It's really noticeable if you have been in the area in the last year or two. And I think that, what we can kind of forecast is for the next couple of years. And I think that the real hype will be around, the Olympics next year. Of course, Tour de France happens every year as well. And there's always a big hype around France at that time of year. But, and by the way, this year it's coming really close to the castle, which is exciting. And but next year, I think, is going to be when all the action happens. They are not holding back in promoting France and promoting some of the most incredible locations. They're putting arenas underneath the Eiffel Tower for certain sports. They're putting all of the equestrian on at Versailles. So definitely, don't underestimate the number of clients that are going to be talking and thinking about and looking at France, come the Summer Olympics of next year. And I think from that, we can kind of forecast 2025 and 2026 as being really big years and kind of buzzing years for, the French tourism industry and for the events and weddings that are taking place there. And we don't just do weddings, we do corporate events as well. So, the big advantage really in a location like this that is American owned is that, you have that American mentality and perspective in terms of what our attitudes are towards not only American people, but of course people from all around the world. The French do have a few, prejudices. I can, I speak from experience there. I know that as an Australian, I am quite often the preferred person to talk to when it's between myself and someone like Kevin. They are, especially in certain communities, particularly, Paris, often actually in the more, regional communities, they're actually fantastic people, but they're definitely in that high end ultra luxury market. There are prejudices that are there. So, don't underestimate the importance of having a team on site to take care of all aspects of essentially what your job is. And you're just, for this type of an event, if you're bringing that budget to us, you become basically the liaising person from, the American perspective, or from, whatever other country or place your client is from. So, for us, we're interested in saving you time, so much time that, believe me, it takes, don't underestimate how many challenges in terms of planning an event or a wedding in France should not be challenges, but they are. There are just so many elements of it, not to mention, the timing, the organized aspects of things that need to be planned months, even years out in advance. It's really, really important to take advantage of a team that have the relationships already established. Because as Kevin was saying, that relationship building, and it really is old school. It's, how do you know that person? What's your connection? How many times have you gone out to dinner with them? It's old school relationship building. It's not like, oh, you bought me this, client before, or I know you from this other budget, for example. It's not to do with the numbers. It's all to do with that really personal relationship that you have with them. Also, finding those vendors in America is a really big challenge. Even with a VPN going, if you use that and you type in French, quite often the best vendors, and the vendors that are not going to be ridiculously absurd in price, but can still deliver of the same quality, often they're not easy to find online. And, they've got unusual names of the businesses. They don't necessarily invest in their marketing and branding the same way that we're kind of used to in America. But that's, another challenge is just finding them in the first place and knowing who the best ones are. It really does come from that word of mouth, like I said, old school relationship building. So that's a challenge. The other thing is with ultra luxury, events and weddings, quite often we get some crazy requests, from clients, and it'll be requests that, maybe aren't typical from, other different events that you might do. The kinds of requests that we, are saying yes to here would probably blow most of your minds. It's ridiculous. We've had requests for elephants, on the front lawn, Indian weddings, which can be enormous affairs. Also, just the fact that these events and weddings are multiple days. They're not just an afternoon or an evening. They're multiple days, and that adds, a huge amount of logistical complexity in terms of the planning and the executing, because, it's one thing to, maybe the week before or something, have something fall through and need to find someone else at the last minute. In America, it's a totally different ball game trying to, come up with a backup plan at the last minute, in France for a multiple day long event, which is what most of them are that we're doing here. So, for us, we're saying yes to everything. It's about, oh, you want to have elephants on the lawn that will totally destroy the lawn? No problem. For the right budget, we can fix the lawn. That's not a problem. A lot of events and locations, I should say, in France would never say yes to that. They'd laugh at you and say, I don't think this is, the type of event we want to have here. The other things that we can offer here that are pretty unique to the castle are horse-drawn carriages. We have often guests that will come in and fly in by a private jet, or they might land at their event, at their wedding, in a helicopter. A lot of locations actually won't allow that in France because of all sorts of reasons, and the reasons that those particular owners or locations have. We definitely do. We're definitely a yes team more than we are a no team, as most other different venues can be in France. Also, with Kevin's unique background in the photography, the film, the television world, we actually offer something that's really unique to him, and that is the opportunity to get weddings and events published in magazines. That's a really interesting added value that I don't often see, in different wedding packages or location packages. And that's something that, for us, we're about the value add. How can we say that, for 300,000 euros up to the million euro mark, and millions of euros, depending on the scale of the event, how can we make you feel like heck yeah, you're getting an incredible experience you'd never receive elsewhere. And, that value add comes in the form of I think Kevin mentioned it as well, but the honeymoon packages that we include as well. So being able to take care of more and make this a real experience of a lifetime, and, making that experience last for weeks is something that, we love. And, you're making it all about the client, but also making sure that you as the planner are taken care of, and that it's not, months and months out of your time spent planning something like this, which, believe me, if you were coming into France, raw, you didn't have any connections, you weren't sure where to start, it would become months of planning, which, at the end of the day, is it worth your time? Is it worth that 20%, of a few €100,000 if it's taking you that much time? And don't forget the stress on top of that. So, for us, it's about saying yes, making sure that it's an easy transition and an easy process for you and for the clients, making sure that, the backup plans are taken care of, and that the scale of the events, is totally reflected in the types of vendors that we're able to bring in and handle that, what can be a really, really big logistical challenge.
Excellent. Well, Priscilla, you mentioned some of the challenges. Why don't you talk a little bit about, I would say, kind of the aspects of even the transportation, because I know that a lot of times, with travel, people think it's really easy, but logistical challenges and maybe some of the solutions that you have. I mean, and say you don't have a private jet, say it's a different situation, or the client's unwilling to do the, a $3 million package with private jets, but they do want to have luxury transportation. What does that look like? Because I know that there's a lot of challenges when you're traveling in Europe.
There definitely are. For me, when I'm going across often I'm flying from Australia or America to France and back, you actually have to time it really carefully if you're taking care of yourself. If you're renting a vehicle and doing it in a maybe a regional location, believe it or not, but there's not always the option to rent vehicles at certain days on certain hours at certain airports. So, and for, certain lengths of time. So even just that, having to think ahead and plan, a lot of clients would never know to do that and shouldn't have to, honestly. It's a bit ridiculous. But, for us, we also don't want them to even have to worry about the hassle of renting a vehicle, which, believe me, is another challenge in France. They love to nitpick and make anything that should be really simple. In America, you'll just leave the keys when you return a vehicle. In France, it can be a 2-hour-long process just to return a car. So, rental vehicles, we don't want to have clients worrying about that during what should be a really, really enjoyable experience for them. And, something that they'll remember for all the good reasons forever. So, for us, having those, the vehicles, the transportation, luxury transportation in the form of private vehicles and private car rides from and to and from the airports, making sure they're getting there at the right time. We take care of all of that as well. So it really is, and when we say all inclusive, it's by, the true meaning of the term all inclusive. This is something where, there shouldn't have to be anything extra that they're paying for that surprises them or annoys them or irritates them at the end. We want the clients that are experiencing this location at the very end to say, we either, love to send friends and family here, or, come back for another event or whatever it might be. We want them to feel like that, as opposed to, oh, that was such a stressful experience, never doing that again. So, never underestimate the power of those luxury clients to have their network that could be your future clients as well. So, that's also really important for us. And the vehicles, the transportation, that's an area that can become a nightmare, especially if they're taking care of it on their own. It's not something that we advocate doing that. So, unless they're spending weeks in France prior to the event, which most people, and especially Americans, don't have the time for that. So for us, we take care of everything from the airport, door to door, and any other requests that come up along the way. Every client has unique, needs and necessities along the way. They might have forgotten something. We take care of absolutely everything. So the logistics in terms of, the language barrier is something that, we've got staff on site that speak, both English and French. And of course, we can arrange it for different languages too, if there's other, nationalities coming in. So, for us, no problem's too big. And we want to make sure that transition and the journey over, it starts and ends, from that airport pickup and drop off really, really well. So it's something to remember and cherish.
Excellent. And you know what, Priscilla, another thing I wanted to ask you about is the photographic and video services. You mentioned this earlier, how you feel like there's it's really important to have world-class content created, because, you're such an amazing place. And then not only for your bride and groom, but also for you as the wedding planner. If you guys all out there, I would imagine that this needs to be a showcase piece. If you're going to send people on a destination wedding, it's not the same old venues that you have in your area in Southern California or New York or Miami or whatever, but you have these all incredible ultra luxury destinations, and you want to be able to showcase them. So why don't you talk a little bit about the why the quality of content is important, and kind of like what you should look for as a wedding planner in working with your photographers and your videographers for the destination weddings.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly the types of photographers and videographers that, are working on locations like this and working at this level, you should be essentially choosing them based on their portfolio and their video reels. If at this level, they should definitely have top supermodels. They may or may not have been Vogue published, or at least of the top tier magazines, and have those publications. It'll also reflect the quality of their network too. In terms of the content here, I mean, is so much that's high quality about what we see here, and a lot more to come as well. And there's obviously with top supermodels and top level production filmed in 8K, having the drone content, having, all of this really, really high quality cinematic content. That is essentially, before the client can even come and see the place, obviously what they'll be, looking for and what they'll be deciding based upon. But certainly with those photographers and videographers, making sure that the content they have in their portfolios, this is a great example here, Kevin's portfolio, from his own, fashion editorial work. This is the kind of content you want to see from your photographers and videographers as well. Having, a world-class video reel, having, at least a 40 image, portfolio, body of work with top supermodels that represent, really, really high top tier productions. And a lot of the time, the memories that are created at the event and at that location, if you don't have a fantastic photographer and videographer, or team, really, it should be at this level, team of them, then what those guests, what those clients are going to be showing to their friends and family, aka future clients, it may not reflect enough value necessarily to be able to land those future clients and send them your way. Weddings and events, it's a visual industry. So what they see and what they perceive will determine, who they send your way, and whether or not there'll be a lot more coming back. So it's really important to be very selective. And, normally I think for us, we say that the budget for your photography and videography team should be about, I think it's 15% of the budget for the event and the wedding specifically. So, that's significant, and it needs to be, with a world-class team that absolutely reflect that.
Absolutely. And that is one huge advantage also that we bring to the table actually at the castle, is the world-class production teams that we have access to. So, with the unbelievable world-class fashion photographers that also happen to shoot weddings, and offering something that's unique and special. For instance, this is a production that I had actually helped art direct, but something like this, where it's like, you're creating these timeless moments and creating this unbelievable photography that just blows away a client, makes them really excited, makes them special, and then more importantly, harnessing the power of publication. A lot of times, if you're trying to justify a higher ticket type of sale to the client, trying to justify a bigger budget, for instance, it's really important to, wouldn't you agree, Priscilla, to be able to showcase not just a regular old wedding photographer, but a world-class fashion photographer that also happens to shoot weddings. Something like this, something that's beautiful content. And then also, Priscilla, do you think that a bride would be, more likely to want to work with you and your photographer if that photographer was, say, Vogue published, or could get them published in a nationally or internationally published magazine?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, looking at content like this, remember that those brides, that first point of contact when they, become engaged, it's going to be, bridal magazines. So that's the standard you've got to compare your photographers and your videographers to, is basically what else is out there that's of the same, at least of that threshold and that standard. So so important, and definitely a huge selling point, a big way to add value into those packages, and to, essentially and potentially turn a 300,000 euro wedding into something even more. So there's a lot of ways, once you're working within that budget, to surprise the clients, things they've never even thought of or thought to consider. And that's something with our location at the French Dream Castle. There's so many surprise elements like that we've even got, I think, a massage tower, we call it. So it's literally a massage room in the Southeast Tower. It's ridiculous. And to have an unlimited access to it, it's not just one that you get, it's unlimited. So if the bride needs to have 5 a day or something to keep calm during the wedding, no problem. So for us, it's about adding value at a whole new level, and that definitely extends to your videography and photography team that you're bringing on board to make sure you capture all that magic.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Priscilla. I really appreciate all of your guidance, all your strategy, and everything that you bring to the table, not only the French Dream Castle, but also because you are on the ground dealing with this. In fact, you're flying back to France and handling all kinds of things going on in France at the castle in just like a week. So you're dealing with all of this on a daily basis, and you're kind of the expert strategist when it comes to all of this. And by the way, guys, I know I put a link in the chat, and I encourage you guys all to click on, if you haven't already, and set up a one-on-one strategy session or a consult with Priscilla on strategizing for your wedding clients. How to, basically talk about how you can deliver the French Dream Castle experience to your clients, because it is something that not only is extremely unique, it's something completely over the top, it's something completely different, it's something that separates you as an ultra luxury wedding planner, but also you're also going to be heavily compensated on the back end to be able to get a 10% kickback over the overall budget on the back end from us to convince your clients to go with us. So it is a really cool opportunity if you want more information about the castle, and if you have any brides and grooms that are interested in coordinating it out. We are now booking up for 2025, and we would love and be honored to talk with you guys about that. So please click on that. And also, if you haven't answered already, please answer in the polls. What level of wedding budgets do you work with? Are you dealing with the $1 million budgets, like, these ultra luxury ones? Are you dealing with 300,000, 200,000? It looks like most of you guys were in the 200,000 plus range. That is fantastic. And even if, that is a typical, say, domestic budget, when it comes to a destination wedding, oftentimes it adds up more, because we're dealing with, travel, we're dealing with vendors in other countries, we're dealing with more complexities, and it's something that, we can educate the client in that. And that's something we can also help you guys with as well when pitching something like the French Dream Castle. But whether it's, jumping on with one of our castle consultants or with, Priscilla herself, the chatelaine, we'd love to talk with you guys, build that relationship long term, and create some amazing collaborations together. Thank you so much, Priscilla, for jumping on, and look forward to seeing you at the castle.
Thank you. And if there's any further questions as well today, I'm more than happy to answer them in the Q&A or the chat right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Priscilla. All right, so all right, guys, now's a great time to ask some questions. If you guys have any additional questions, I'd love to hear them in the Q&A. And if you guys haven't done that already, make sure to set up your one-on-one consult about the French Dream Castle. And I know I touched on a lot of information today. This was a pretty intensive webinar, but we're also going to be doing some additional webinars specifically about different aspects of destination wedding planning and things not just about the castle, but also at all the other destinations. Because I'm a TV travel host. I'm the host, director, and producer of the TV show Great Escapes that airs on CBS. And I have a lot of experience with traveling, not only with luxury events and travel and wedding, but also with television. If also if you have clients that are interested in getting publicity, whether it's featuring their, this is actually clips from my travel show, Great Escapes, that I'm the director, producer, and host of, and cinematographer. But if they're interested in, okay, they might even want to have schedule their wedding to be airing on a TV show, because we also, at the castle, it's a filming location. So it's not just for weddings and corporate events, but we also do filming. So think of, the high level shows we're working with are shows similar to like Bridgerton, Downton Abbey, major motion pictures, as well as reality TV shows and such like that. So there are opportunities to also feature weddings on TV, because we are, part of the shows that we're doing, especially the reality shows, we're filming stuff where it showcases the kind of behind the scenes and all the aspects of the crazy events that are happening at the castle. So if this is something that also you have an interest in, or you have a, you feel like your clients would be interested in, or you want to be, involved in something with television, that is something that, we'd love to further that conversation about, because we do have a lot of opportunities. It's an extra value add to add to the table to a client if we could, create something like that. It's definitely a great opportunity. And I have some great questions I just want to answer, because a bunch of you guys asked a bunch of questions. Do you guys have minimums vary by season? Actually, Brianne, the minimums are the same year round. They are the same year round. Now, of course, the majority of the time when people are doing a destination wedding in France, it's usually in the summer and fall months. So, of course, the season, it's going to be, like May, June, July, August, September into October. Those are generally the busiest times, but we do offer weddings year round. But of course, those are the most popular times because of the weather and everything like that. But also remember, there's also one more thing that Priscilla didn't mention. She mentioned something about the, there's certain days of the week that you can't access rental cars and everything's closed. But also there are certain times of year. So in August, for instance, which is a prime wedding month, the entire country of France is shut down. And I mean the entire country. Everything is shut. Everything, like everything you could think of is shut. It's hard to even get food. Okay. It's so complicated to do things in August. Now we have this on the ground. We're dealing with this all the time. So we coordinate it, and we set up and put on events, but August is very challenging. So if you're a wedding event planner, and also some of the other countries in Europe are a challenge as well, like in Italy, but in France in August, the entire country is shut down. Nobody works. It's all holiday. And in France, a lot of people don't work anyways. So they just don't work. It's completely, everyone is on holiday. Everyone's on vacation. So that's another thing to think about. And that is one huge advantage if you are doing an August wedding, working with our team, because we have people that and if they're not available in France, like French people, we fly them in, bring in crew, because we have people that we source from all over the world. But people in France don't work in August. It's crazy. And there's also a lot of logistics too. So if you say, and it depends on per country in Europe, but in France, it's actually illegal to ask people to work after certain times of day. Like I believe it's after like 6 p.m. It's illegal to have them to work. It's illegal to ask people to work on weekends. Now special events can be a bit different, but generally if they are an employee, that's a big challenge. So that's something that a lot of wedding planners aren't even aware of. So if you're dealing with regular employees, it's very, very, very complicated with dealing with like French labor laws and stuff like that. So this is something that we, of course, work around, and we also bring in outside non-French people too to manage that and to deal with that, because we have butlers, we have maids, we have house staff and everything like that. They're not all French. So we can make sure we can, get around some of those logistical challenges, if you could imagine. All right. So the other thing too is curating and telling a story. I know we talked about this a little bit, but telling a story that the bride can showcase to the world, because oftentimes, of course, everybody wants to showcase everything on Instagram, everything on Facebook, on social. They want to create this amazing persona. And then one of the reasons brides and grooms spend a lot of money, it's to show off. It's to show off. They want to have the best wedding, the most special day. It's not just because they love each other. They want to show off. They want to, they're going to spend $500,000 on a wedding. They want that everyone else to know that, right? So that's something, of course, that I think is really important to help them with by curating a story. Now, it's not just the story of, you know, the event that happens, but it's also when you're telling the story photographically or with video, it's creating a story around that bride and groom for those moments to happen. And you guys got to see a little bit of it in some of those clips and videos that we were showcasing, but telling a story. And I even go in so far as to like actually design out and create a storyboard of what the story needs to look like. And the beautiful thing at the French Dream Castle, for instance, is a multiple day stay. So we can actually, you know, it's chaos on the day of the wedding. And sometimes it's really hard to do the photography in between, you know, the ceremony and the reception and have enough time to do everything you want. So if you want to do something really special, we can also arrange to do the photo shoot, you know, at the castle, but ahead of the wedding, so that we can actually create those amazing, amazing stories photographically and video without the pressure, without the stress, without the chaos of the day itself. And I think that you as a wedding planner can probably appreciate that because it ends up helping, and you can create something that's far more carefully controlled like this. Yeah. And that way it's also more likely we can get them published. We can get them published in nationally and internationally published magazines. I personally have been published in over 200 magazines. I have, you know, content that I've art directed has won over 175 photographic awards just in the last 2 years. And it's, you know, it's all because of this storytelling. It's all because of the art direction. And this is something that even as a wedding, doing weddings, you have to make it special, because that bride and groom is going to expect nothing but the best. It's very, very, very important. Yeah. Okay. Erica Hernandez asks, you work with people that have a lot of tech money up in, sounds like in Seattle area, and they have big budgets. They don't necessarily want the frills. They're hoodie and t-shirt people. I get it. How many of them, however, many of them want to focus on giving guests epic and unique experiences in the destinations they're traveling to. Can you talk a little bit more about what available at the castle in the area to do or to see? That's an excellent question, Erica. One of the things that I recommend is, you know, first of all, if they're flying to France, I would have them do some experiences in Paris first. That's what I would do. Honestly, I would say that specifically the bridal party, I would have them. I mean, every woman wants to go to France, go to Paris and have their, you know, their time, the Champs-Elysees. They want to be able to, you know, do everything, all this, you know, see the Arc de Triomphe, go to Versailles, go to Fontainebleau, go to the most amazing places in France. And I recommend that, and then bringing them down to the actual wedding itself at this secluded getaway. In this region, it's an unbelievable property. Now, it's a 12-acre estate. And what's incredible about this location is that there's actually laneways around the perimeter. You can probably see it in some of the videos there, but they're hidden by the trees because they're covered in ivy. But there are these beautiful laneways that surround the entire perimeter. And what's cool about it is that, I don't know if any of you guys are Outlander fans, but we actually have a 4,000-year-old Celtic stone on the southeast corner of the property that is unbelievable. It's almost like a miniature Stonehenge, which is really interesting to go and see. There's also, it's the same plot on the property, on this castle's property, there's a 2,000-year-old, there was a sarcophagus discovered there from the famous General Marcellus that's actually on the southeast corner, and the entire ground, underneath the ground, it was a Roman palace. So the entire castle was built above a Roman palace. So there's some artifacts and stuff like that. And the castle itself has a lot of incredible history. So, for instance, for those of you who have girls that, you know, or brides that as a little girl, they were ballerinas, wanted to be ballerinas, or they did ballet. One of the unique things about this castle is that it also has a full-scale ballet studio built specifically for the most famous ballet dancer in world history who lived at my castle, Rudolf Nureyev. He's the most famous ballet dancer in world history. He is like the god of ballet. So if any of you guys are familiar with ballet, and he lived at my castle, and they literally built the ballet studio for him. And this was about 50 years ago. And I still have the ballet studio within the castle, and it's also one of the areas in which we use as a ballroom, and doing like costume balls and amazing bridal experiences there. And it takes up most of the third level of the castle. It's a really incredible area. So there's a lot of unique things actually at the castle and on the castle property, because it's on 12 acres. It's absolutely spectacular. It's all rolling hills in the distance. And then there's a lot of natural stuff nearby, a lot of other fabulous castles, Michelin star restaurants. It's an absolutely beautiful region. It's one of my favorite regions of all of France. It is the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. It's about 3 hours from Switzerland, and it is absolutely spectacular. But that's a really great question, Erica, and I think that a lot of those clients specifically would love something like this. Excellent. I absolutely love all of these questions. Okay. All right. So thank you guys so much. I'm really excited. I feel like we've offered a lot of value and showed you guys some strategies and things that hopefully you guys will take away, and also some things to think about when you're designing and developing these luxury destination wedding experiences. And I would love and be honored if you guys talk with us and essentially offer this opportunity to your guests, because not only would you provide one of the most spectacular dream wedding experiences that you could possibly imagine, but also you're offering something that the financial compensation from it is impressive, and you'll be able to not only create something for your portfolio to showcase other clients, you could also it's very, very financially rewarding to have an experience like this for your guests. Thank you guys so much. And I also look forward to, since I got all of the people answering in the survey questions, all of those you guys are answered, we will select one lucky winner who will receive a free all-inclusive stay at the castle that we can coordinate with you and have you come and experience this yourself. Take care, guys, and I cannot wait to see you in person. And I definitely look forward to seeing you on the next live webinar on destination luxury wedding planning.